textiles. We documented around 13 scheduled and non-scheduled tribes, and we showed that, like our people, it's a composite Assamese civilization. It's a composite Assamese textile. While you could see the individual tribes having a different kind of, language with regard to motives, the tools they used, the fabric they used. However, you could see that there was a way that you could thread all of it together to call it the Assamese textile. We also saw that there were other elements that made the Assamese textile. One, of course, is the influence of Neo-Vaishnavism and Shankaradev's contribution. And the second was that, as per the Tabaqat in Nasiri, the first Muslim invasion in Assam happened in 1205. See is that most of them actually, stayed back and contributed to the use of guna, as silver and golden thread into our, otherwise hitherto we have been using thread into our weaving. And much later with, in the Ahom time, you find that, more specific influences, which I'll just get to. Now, most of the tribes, and it was so lovely when we visited these tribes, that they had an oral tradition, a song, or something to remind us about how much of an importance they gave to weaving and the way the designs are actually explained through these oral traditions. Many of the motifs and techniques are lost, and therefore I think that it is very important that we as a people have a common repository where we document and actually the designs that are lost, how do we kind of, make it more central to our design language. So these two events that I talked about is really recent after the NGO was established. However, wearing my hat as one of the specializations that I do in law is intellectual property rights. And most of my practice is with regard to really, patents and science and medicines and medical devices. However, I took a very keen interest in geographical indication to try and see how is it that I could utilize it to benefit our state and our people. So in 2007, along with the Assam Science, Technology, Environment Council, ASTEC, we made a bid for getting, really, that was the 5th geographical indication that was obtained for Muga Silk of Assam. And there was a very extant, presentation and a rigor that we went through to obtain that. And in 2013, we also got a Muga Silk of Assam logo. Now, one of the things that I would like to talk about is that getting the GI itself is really not the end all and be all. It is very important to, one, standardize, what it means to get a geographical indication. And second, you ensure that, as most of the people who utilize it are possibly weavers and therefore they may not be the most aware, how do you take this advocacy and tell them about the GI and how to use it so that the actual potential and value is realized? I did as to how people have registered for being the official users of the logo and the GI. So I was told it's just 234, which means that the outreach between 2007 and 2020 has not been that great. And therefore, I actually am a great votary of organizing the women, whether you call it self-help groups or cooperatives. It's very important to do that because there is a platform that is created and a bargaining power provided to the weaver to be able to utilize these resources in a manner that they can actually get more value in the marketplace. So geographical indication, I mean, it will be interest of, especially because it's a Zoological Forum that has invited me. I thought this would interest you. Muga silk, we were able to get the protection is because, for one, the silkworm itself, Antheria assaminis, is in the name itself, you know that it is endemic to Assam. And the trees that it feeds on, som and the swallow, are both endemic to Assam and is very particular to the climate, that is heavy rainfall, humidity, sunshine, the soil of the Brahmaputra Valley, which is rich in iron, the flora and the fauna. And this is so typical that you cannot separate the two, and therefore Muga, it possesses the characteristics, the reputation and the quality that are essentially attributable to the geographic origin and the geography of Assam. The thread itself is it's glossy, fine texture, it's very tensile, it's durable, and it's to a large extent heat resistant, and also has UV qualities. As we went around the different tribes, we found that much of the communities, in each of the communities' traditional knowledge was linked to Muga. Be it the Boros that we visited or the missing tribe, it is such a long tradition, and it's their community's cultural expression. And it is also, with the growing interest and I think requirement actually for sustainable development and the environment, it is essential that we actually maintain the way, the traditionalness of the way it was cultivated and the way it is, harnessed. So this is a very important aspect for people in the students in this seminar today, who wants to kind of take forward this as a vocation or a profession or a business, that we actually utilize and know about this heritage in order to actually get a greater market value. My own interest is really with indigenous women, rural women, and how is it possible to kind of get them together in a platform to be able to get the maximum value and bargaining power in the marketplace. But I think that there is something to be said about entrepreneurship in this area, and I do feel that there is a very huge lacune in terms of doing something which is innovative, new, whether it is newer design, newer technology to be used within the handloom framework, and therefore get a greater market share and a market. So I thought this would interest you. This is the Muga silkworm, and these are the som and the swallow. One of the things that I did mention is that we have lost a lot of our tradition and our heritage. One such is really the Majankari. The Majankari has been mentioned in a number of historical sources that we could list out before this GI committee. And when we were asked that whether it is kind of still there, so we had to admit that there is, it is rare. There are some pockets where it is being a reinitiation is being done. But in the mainstream, Majankari, in a way, it is lost. But Majankari was really the higher Muga silk. And therefore, I think there is a great area, a lacune, that people can find as a way of starting a business in this. Along with the Muga area, and apart from Eri and Pat, one other thing that we have lost in the last 100 years is the short staple cotton that was grown in the Garo hills and all, and this was like very, very fine cotton. I looked up the historical records. About 1835, there was a customs house in Goalpara, and in the customs house records, we find that the Ahom kingdom was exporting muga and short staple cotton in 1835. And today, it's very little of the cultivation, and most of the cotton is actually imported from elsewhere. So that is a little sad. I am aware that in other parts of the country, for example, in Goa, Konkan area, there was a very fine cotton called Kunbi, and it was lost. But in recent years, through revival, initiatives, the Kunbi cotton is grown again, and it is much prized. In fact, Wendell Rodrigues, who is no more, he did a lot around using Kunbi textiles. So we actually need to revive this cotton and the Majankari silk, and ensure that it is used and known more. Then we come to designs, and it was not possible. I was trying to kind of get more designs in, but I was told that it will be difficult to kind of have upload it and sustain it. So I'm sorry that I have very few designs. This is a design, the king cup motif, two lions facing each other. It was there are three theories actually. That first is that it is really organic. It was the Ahom design to begin with, and there was no outside influence. The second is that the influence came through the Silk Route and the Chinese. And the third is that it came through King Huap, more from the Middle East, again through the Silk Route, but from the Middle East, from Persia, and through the Mughals. During the time of Rudrakhinga, 1696 to 1714, and you see that this was used by the Ahom royalty. It was reserved for the royalty almost. And now, of course, in any Assamese bride's trousseau, this is something that you will have to include. I picked this design because the missing designs have now become more mainstream. And we wear it very often. I love the missing designs, but I picked up this Karbi design. It's called the Jambili Athon, 5 birds representing the 5 main Karbi clans sitting on a tree. And this design again I find it's less common, but definitely it is used more. And my book actually documented many of this, at least 1-2 designs of each tribe. This is a design of the fauna, and it is becoming, more restoration. It's a missing design. This particular design is of Anuradha Kuli. It is the thread used, it's in Muga, and the thread used is all natural dyed. There is a big market for natural dyed products now. It's a value addition. It is also like a, something that we lost, a traditional knowledge of natural dyes is reviving that. I think there is a big market and a very unique market where you can sell things far more high priced if it is natural dyed and using like an ahimsa silk, etc. These concepts actually give an entrepreneur an edge in the market. It's a very discerning market. Talking about heritage and Assamese textile heritage, and I think that no discussion can be complete without mentioning the new Vaishnava influence in Assamese textiles. This particular Vrindavani Vastra is actually about 200 years after Shankardev. It was woven in 12 strips of silk. And it is now in the British Museum. You'll wonder, why is it in the British Museum? So it appears that the Assamese at 1680s was also a little careless about heritage, because it appears that it somehow managed to reach Tibet. So in 1903, 1904, the young husband expedition to Tibet, there was a Times journalist, one Percival London. He accompanied this expedition, and he got hold of this 12 strips of silk. And this each strip, it depicts scenes from the early life of Krishna, as recorded in the 10th century text of Bhagavad Purana, and the 10 incarnations of Lord Vishnu, as well as 11 lines from the Kaliya Daman in the Onkya Nat written by Srimanta Sankardev. Now, this is interesting because it is in the British Museum. The British Museum very proudly showed it in January 2016. And then I did a little more research and found that there are various other Vrindavani Vastras from Assam in the Musée Guimet in Paris, as well as the Los Angeles County Museum of Art in the United States. So we have actually lost this heritage completely. I must tell you how disappointed I was to see the the display in the Assam State Museum as well as in the Kalakshetra. I think part of preserving the heritage and celebrating the Assamese textiles is also knowing more about our own heritage and ensuring that for posterity we in a way protect it and preserve it and display it to get back our textile heritage. So I will not go further with this as to what it because that brings me into a political realm, but it's enough to say that these are things that should come back to our country. I was telling you about the intangible heritage and the traditional methods of doing what we do. And these are some of our experiences going to many villages, that we still do things very traditionally. And I think they should be maintained as they are. This is, I gave you the example of Peru and the Takil textile. And this is no different. This is a missing village near Balipara. We went to another Karbi village and we saw the same backstrap loom that is used. And what dexterity that these women have. She actually did half of it in the half an hour, 45 minutes that we spent with her. This is in a Karbi village. This is backstrap loom again, but done, on the pit. So then we come to, more of an explanation about how is it that we need innovation somewhat that can help the weaver do things a little more faster. And earlier the weaver would just, and actually why am I saying earlier? It's even today. They would just do it in by a natural hisab kitab. But there is intervention possible, and one that I saw in Ambari, this is a small initiative where the design is first researched, then in a computer this was gotten. For example, just see the various mora, the various kinds of mora that this person was able to get onto the computer. Using jacquard cuts, you punch it, and these are not very expensive, but you do need the jacquard strip and the jacquard machine fitted into the handloom, and you get more precision in the design. You get it faster and more uniformity. So this is something that, some innovation in a small way. Most of it, I asked the gentleman, I said, where are these, jacquard cards done? So he said that they had to do work with a Pune-based company because they were used to doing more, the other textiles, but they did it for the Assamese designs. And I feel that this is one area that any one of you young people listening to me today, you could possibly think of, like, taking this up as a business, and thinking of ways of how you can kind of make it better. By the way, in terms of uptake of the jacquard cards and the jacquard machine, I found it to be not even like 15% to the places that I went to. In the villages, definitely not. They still use the traditional method of cutting, the design. But this is something that would, say if an average hull costs about 6,000 to 7,000, the wooden beams and all. Adding on the jacquard machine and using of the cards would just be about another 3,000 to 4,000 rupees added on. And you, of course, have to skill the weaver. But this is something, an intervention that we are actually considering, that at least you adopt, one or two villages to be able to kind of do this and see how the productivity can increase by the use of the jacquard cards. And my final comment in the slides, and I then will be very happy to take other, questions, and perhaps it can be a little more interactive. So how do you really protect the handloom products? So in 1985, the Handlooms Reservation of Articles for Production Act was notified by the central government, reserving a number of items, including the Assamese gamusa, to be only sourced from handlooms. However, we find that from 1985, even through to now, the enforcement is very, very difficult. Earlier, there was still a possibility, before you had the GST, which made everything uniform, the VAT, because handloom products at that point in Assam at least had no VAT imposed. And therefore, if machine made or power loomed gamusas flooded the market, especially during Bihu, they were being sold at really very cheap prices, and the handloom gamusa could not compete with it, and therefore, you had fewer handloom gamusas sold. So I find that in 2015, perhaps realizing this, the Office of Commissioner of Taxes, Assam, April 2015, came up with an order under which anybody selling gamusas or dealing with gamusas had to give a declaration that they do not deal with any gamuchas other than those produced by handlooms. Because they're exempted from VAT, that is how the Commissioner of Taxes could get in. And along with gamusas, they also said that buying and selling in traditional Muga and Eri-based cloth and garments like Mekhala Sada or Muga saris shall issue a bill payment receipt, to the buyer consumer, clearly mentioning that original Muga Eri silk of Assam or silk of Varanasi or Mysore, etc., is applicable, so that the consumers can make conscious choice to buy the products. Most people actually do not want to. They want to make a choice to buy, what is handloomed and what is from that place. However, you have unscrupulous people dealing with and passing off. That is the crime. And by the way, under this act, it has been made a criminal offense and a cognizable offense with 6 months imprisonment along with fine. But yet you have very little enforcement. This is really my short presentation. I think I stopped sharing. Can I just go back? I stopped sharing and then. Yes. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So how do you want to kind of, go ahead? Should it be like a more question answer thing, or do you want me to elaborate something more on a particular aspect that you talked about?
Ma'am, if possible, you can elaborate regarding the prospects, how our students should start their for their sustainability, because as due to the pandemic situation, they may have to go with their business purpose. Can you elaborate on that part, ma'am?
Okay, so let me just give you. Pradeep, my voice is echoing. Just be here so that. Okay, so I feel that in any endeavor, especially in entrepreneurship, a leader is very important. You have to lead from the front. So if you are and if you are passionate about what you are doing, actually that is the main recipe, more than even getting finance and other variables, which are all very necessary for the ultimate objective. But the leadership and the passion is the most important. So anyone who is keen to take this on, let me give you an example of this young engineer that I met during writing this book. His name is Kostav. He is an engineer by training, and he decided to give up engineering and went back to Jorhat and started this company. And it is very interesting. He's already made a mark. And what he did was that his concept is that it is from soil to the product. He grows his own, sum sawalu and eri, and rears the silkworm, goes through the whole process of manufacturing the yarn, and then he weaves. He also told me that, he finds that the Assamese weaver is rather lazy, and the productivity is less. And therefore, he actually got weavers from Orissa and from West Bengal to weave. I can understand, because it's a business, I guess, he has to keep that up. And I now know. Hello? What happened? Okay, so now I now know that he has really attracted a lot of attention from international organizations for the work that he is doing in Jorhat. So that was one example. The other example is actually Anuradha Cooley herself. She started with a lot of knowledge on sericulture, and she does natural dyed products, mostly missing designs. And today she is one of the foremost designers in the country, and she shows in the Lakme fashion show every year, and has made a mark. I also want to give an example of the more socially conscious businesses, where it is not a business for yourself, but you also develop an area along with or people along with the business, and which is a great model to adopt for younger persons. If when you're young, you don't take this risks and a path, when will you take it? So you must experiment, and that is that you have a cooperative, and it need not be a public company. It could just be a cooperative where you do the whole hog. You do the skilling of local young people, give them different roles, men and women. You get design interventions, and in this design intervention, I feel you can maintain the motifs and the silk or the cotton, which is local or natural dyed, but you make things that are more fast moving. See, most of I'm wearing a missing mekhla chadar. Most of us Assamese would wear that, and therefore it will always have a market. But you need to make products that will sell faster. For example, I sit in the board of Rashtriya Gramin Vikas Nidhi, RGVN in Guwahati. And one of the latest projects that RGVN has taken up is really the self-help groups, buying from them. And they have a retail outlet in Guwahati called Grass Looms. The products they have come up with, that's why the reason I mention it, is fantastic. It's world class. They're making table mats, napkins, stoles, bags, the Kaziranga animals, wall hanging. So these kind of products are not priced too high, and yet it has a very ready market. So apart from a very few, I can count on my fingertips, outlets in Guwahati, I don't find these products, more universally. And there is a market for it. And I also find that, y'all as youngsters are far more adept to the digital space. I am still very challenged, I find that Instagram or Facebook or Twitter, not Twitter so much, but Instagram and, Facebook, people tend to be able to sell a lot, even WhatsApp. I mean, I had designers call me up to say that, can we show you designs on WhatsApp video and therefore make a sale. So I think moving away, principally, I don't think so, because mekhla chadar and our, traditional wares must be protected and woven and worn. But for an outside market, for the footprints to be outside Assam, it is important that you have product diversity and of a quality. One other thing, other than the digital literacy that I talked about, is really environment consciousness. There's a big market for ahimsa silk, for example, where you don't, kill the silkworm, and you find a way of extracting the silk without killing the silkworm. And if you market it as such, you actually have a far larger market, especially if you want footprints, not just in India, but in the West. That is very important. Ethical marketing and ethical production is like if you have to go up the value chain, that's a huge value chain that you go up by. If you say that, you do not use child labor, you don't, you ensure that, the environment is protected, find the tick boxes. There is an entire checklist that BRAC uses for certifying each of their manufacturing facility, their own as well as the ones that they source from. So that kind of creates a very large market for you outside the country. And my final comment there would be that, finance. Finance is a big part. I found that with BRAC, the reason Arong was so successful is that BRAC started in 1974 with a microfinance initiative. And in a way, small loans were given to the women to be able to kind of, buy the yarns, or a yarn bank started. And they also were able to buy back the products from the weaver and sell it in their own retail shop. So there was a very well-organized, well-oiled machinery. Now, there are new initiatives of this government where without collateral, at least, to a certain extent, funds are given from the bank, a lakh or something, I think, not much. But this is an area that I think currently the microfinance in situation in Assam is not very good. The interest rates are almost usurious. It's like 22% to 24%, and most of the microcredit is going to unproductive, non-productive, buys, like a TV or a motorcycle, and then there is this whole loop of not being able to repay. So one has to start small. One has to start a little bit of own resources, I think. And, there is a market there. In case of Delhi, do reach out. Please understand that the Assamese diaspora is a market, but I would think that aiming an entire business for the Assamese larger diaspora outside India, in the rest of India, or even, in Assam, is a little limiting. So you have to design your products and reach in a manner that you can actually capture a larger market. So I'll stop there and open it for questions or comments.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, I'd like to inform you that I think the topic was very nice and your interaction was very nice.
Thank you.
Some of the, we have participants all over India, as well as some from abroad, from Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few questions which have arose from our participant.
Okay.
Meenakshi Sohan.
Okay.
She wants to know what's the name of the design that you have shown the two lions of Rudrasingha.
It's King Cup. King Cup.
Yes, ma'am.
King Cup.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
KHINKHAP. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. The second question is from our Vice Principal, ma'am.
Yes.
She wants to know what is the name of the person and the company in the Jorhat.
Okay. One second. His name is Costa Varun Borbora. And what is this company's name? Can you just find out the company's name, Costa? Costa Borbora.
Can you please repeat it, ma'am?
Kostav, Kaustav, Borbora,
Yes.
Bora.
In Jorhat, in which place he stays? What is?
I will just share that with you. I have it in my phone. Where's my mobile?
Okay.
It's here. So, yes, I'll just come back to you on that. Any other question?
Yeah, ma'am has again asked one. Her second question is, Asima is also called Vegan Silk. Ahimsa, AHIMSA. Ahimsa is also called Vegan Silk. PEGA.
Perhaps, but I am aware of it as just as Ahimsa silk. Vegan silk, I'm not very sure, because vegan would denote something else, I think.
Okay.
I'm aware of it as Ahimsa silk.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And there's another question from Biswajori Devamahanta sir. Is from our history department.
Mm-hmm.
His question is, what role our universities can play in protecting and promoting this traditional craft of Assam?
I think a lot. One of the things that I do like about the recent the new education policy is the focus on vocational studies. Mostly in the school till middle school, and that is very much necessary, because our system, I think, creates is geared towards creating just engineers and doctors and academicians. But what the country needs is like skills at different levels, including the designer, the entrepreneur, the weaver. So one area I think of focus should be right in the beginning in the school. Now at a higher level, which you are, I think more research is required in each of these areas that I talked about. For example, when we did the presentation to the government on trying to obtain the GI, I had done a lot of research and found that there was not one place that you could get information from. And most of the, as you are a history, professor, therefore I'm saying, most of like the information was etc. and secondary, information. The primary information was not necessarily available. Of course, that has been a problem with Assam history in any case. So everybody goes to Edward Gate and beyond to make quotations. So perhaps some work of the Assamese textile. By the way, what I found a rich store of information was the oral, traditions in each of the tribes. Amongst the Boros, I found songs. There were amongst the Karbi, there was storytelling that talked of the designs, and it talked of, the weaving, which I found interesting. So I looked at one of the books available, and I bought it also, on folklores, folk tales, and of Assam, different tribes and all. What I did not find was any focus on weaving tradition or silkworm rearing tradition. There are many other aspects, but weaving is so intrinsic to our tribes and our people that I'd be surprised if there is not one book on that alone. So to make my very convoluted response to what you asked, I think there is a case for research of the traditions. I was talking to a historian called Nayanjot Lahiri. She was in Delhi University, and now she teaches in Ashoka, and has done some very seminal work on Assam history between the 5th and the 12th century. She told me that there is now new paleontology and botanical remains in one of the Indus Valley civilization sites that shows that Muga found its way to the Indus Valley civilization, which will help us date back our Muga almost 2,500 years ago. So that kind of initiative has to be taken by the Assamese. It can't be taken by others. Also, I want to make a point. As by the way, I did my undergrad in history, and therefore this interest in the historical aspects. I also found that a lot of very good work, especially with our languages, dialects, is being done in Australia and in Germany. And there's a whole series of the different tribes and the use of particular words, for say textiles, etc. Textiles, I found mention is a little less, but for other areas, that is a great resource. I wish, because of my interest in textiles, that one could write to them and encourage them to do a little more in-depth work in this. There was some work by a Karbi professor in that Australian university about the culture of fish and how the fish design is in Karbi textiles, which I couldn't find when I went to these villages any memory or any conversation around it. But so these are things that I think documenting it and putting it in one place will enhance the value and respect and pride in our textile traditions. Long answer.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, there's another question from Ankita Sharma. She wants to know, can you please elaborate on some potential opportunities for someone who wants to explore on the opinion of taking of handloom of Assam abroad, specifically Middle East?
I think a lot. Middle East, finally, we are in this space is such that you will need a customer, a discerning customer who has the money to be able to buy the products. So understanding the place where you are and its needs is important. And with the digital e-commerce there to stay, I don't think the pandemic is going to go anywhere till well into next year. You can actually do a dipsticking right now and see. I'm very happy to connect you with grass looms, the RGVN initiative in Guwahati. Dr. Amiya Sharma is the executive director. And you could actually take some of the products and see, it's like a litmus test, see the acceptability, because their products are such that they are making things which are universal. As I said, they are making mats and napkins and all. And you could dipstick and see. So that is one way of one way of starting. The other way is, if you could find stores who are, I'm not very sure about the Middle East, but at least in Australia, they were looking for products like organic, airy, soft for baby clothes. So there was a project which was being done in, not in Assam, in Nongpo area, and the funding was being given by the German, AIDS organization called GIZ. So they actually had a tie-up back-to-back, which is like, they funded this product. They taught the people how to kind of make airy soft. And then they had this big store in Hamburg, buy the material for baby clothes. So Ankita, if you can see in where you live, if there is any mega store that actually does purchasing by the store themselves, and go and meet the designer. What you could start with is, take airy and see if there is, and airy, by the way, and that is why the selling point comes. Airy is something you can wear in summer and winter. It is breathable. It's like, it has so many qualities, and that is something your selling point is. So you could try all that. And the third is that you could think of, natural dyed products. There's a big market, and you could just do the scarves they wear. Those scarves I give them as gifts all the time. People find it very colorful. It's like, natural dyed, it's hand loomed. So there is a lot of value attached to it, especially abroad. Ankita?
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, there's another question from Kishore Paul. His question is, what can we do to protect and promote the local handloom products?
I think I listed out most of it. I think, I'll start from the bottom up. I talked about this act called the Handloom Reservation of Articles for Production Act, 1985. Though it has been a bit of a disaster that there is no enforcement, one has to find ways of enforcement. And currently, this gamusa is the only one from Assam, which is specific to Assam, that is in it. But I think we should include others like Mekhla Sador and Riha. Even like, the Boros uses something called the Pachara. And if the gentleman who asked the question has anything else in mind, that is something that you could approach the Assam government, and through the Assam government, the union government. In fact, the Secretary Textiles now is a Assam cadre officer. What is his name? He came here, the industry secretary also. So he is taking a lot of interest, Ravi Kapoor. So he's taking a lot of interest. So I would suggest that, you know, you either route it through the government of Assam, or route it through an organization, or you yourself can just write to Ravi Kota to say, these are the products that we want reservation for. It should be handloomed. It should be for only for the small scale sector, and it should be only made in Assam, to be sold in Assam. So this is a legal way of doing that, the protection of handloom thing. And also ultimately it becomes a choice. I read a controversy, I think, in social media, that in the recent handloom day in Assam, the Assam government only gifted people gamusa and everything which is not handloomed. So you have to lead by example, that you have made a law, and ensure that just for the 200-300 rupees additional, you don't compromise on the objective of what you're trying to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. There another question from Nandini Sharma. Her question is, ma'am, is there any other product in Assam as of now where there is a potential to acquire GI?
Okay, so why do you get a GI is important. So a little bit of the history to it. It is the French who had this concept called appellations of origin, that if a product is intrinsically attached to the soil, for example, grapes of a certain kind, and you have a very specific manner of production, which is all very age old, and it's documented, and if it is from another place, it'll taste different or be different, then that product deserves to have a protection, which is almost like a trademark protection, and it is called a geographical indication protection. So we found at that point that Muga was really the one, though the geographic area also, is the erstwhile old Assam, which is Meghalaya, and, there are other areas too of the same climatic conditions and soil conditions that could have Muga, but it's primarily Assam that had the Muga, and that is the Brahmaputra Valley. Therefore, you could get it. So there could be other products that could qualify to get a GI. However, getting the GI itself is really not the objective. The objective is, after getting the GI, could you put into place, processes, like say the way they do, the champagne from northern France. Any bubbly wine from any other part of the world cannot be called champagne except the ones which are made in Champagne in northern France. And they have made a law, and as so goes with the Scotch whiskey in Scotland. You can't call it Scotch in any other area. You have to call it merely whiskey if it is not from the area, and that is to do with the soil, the water, etc. So we could not find any other product that would have the potential of commercial realization other than Muga. Though we have very unique things, other unique things. Even eri, I find the eri from Assam much better than eri I could get from any other place. So now, having said that, I found that I checked the Government of India website and saw that there were about 85 products, textiles, that have got geographical indication protection in India. Muga was number 5. So and the logo, only 5 logos have been given. 65 handloom textiles have got the GI protection, and 6 product logos, including for the Muga. So it took a lot of time. So I don't think that our objective should be the GI by itself, but it should be more of like, how do we get the best out of like the Muga? For example, till date, we haven't really made a law around Muga. We should make it. We should make it, because you're not only talking about now, you're also talking about, 200, 300 years later. You want to protect the way it is made, the way it is cultivated. Who knows, the environment may change, but nevertheless, it's important. But but with a caveat that the person who raised the question, if you have a particular product in mind, please do share, so that I could like tell you if it is like, has the potential.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can I take another question?
Ma'am, can I take another question?
Yes, sure. Yeah, I'm happy to take. Yes.
Yeah. One Bhaskar Pathar, he wants to know, what are the benefits of hologram in Assamese indigenous dresses like Pat, Muga, and Gamosa?
Okay, so I am not sure that I understand the hologram issue, but you know that even for Pat, Muga, the only certification that is attached is the silk mart, just saying it's silk. With Muga, we now have the logo, and I think Aztec should do some work around it to ensure that they do the filtering and the certification. I think that the Tejpur University had done some outreach with this regard, but this is one area certainly it needs work, that if it is Muga, you don't need to use the generic silk mark certification. You should be using the Muga of Assam logo to say that it is made in Muga, because now it is very difficult to differentiate between real Muga and what is available in the market. So I really buy from people that I know does work with Muga. There is, I'm sorry that I'm not being able to, explain to you hologram as such, but there is a value addition apart from what we talked about. That say, someone here decides to come up with a company and a product line. It makes a lot of sense to have a trademark protection for the company and for the name, because if the brand grows with time, you will have many people wanting to kind of latch on to the brand. So if you are serious about this business, it does make eminent sense to have a trademark. If you have innovative designs that is your own and not the traditional designs, it makes great sense to do a copyright protection. So in use of intellectual property to be able to kind of make specific designs that are your own, or there is a name and reputation attached to something, actually in the medium to long run it is of great value. That by itself can be bought and sold, the good name.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Then the last question from Namita Das. How to protect the handloom sector from Assam, given that a lot of competition are there from outside?
Can you repeat the question again?
Yeah. How to protect the handloom sector of Assam, given that lots of competition are from outside?
Yeah, so within Assam is more of a problem, because I find that because of cost effectiveness or unavailability of products, we are using a lot of like artificial rayons and all to make mekhla chadars and all. So that I think will always go on, because affordability is an issue. A Muga mekhla chadar now has gone up to 30,000-40,000 rupees. Ordinary people cannot buy that. So there is a case for making that. But I think that our designs and our style, the two-piece thing, is so distinctive. Muga is so distinctive that if we are able to kind of ensure through certification that these are indeed Muga from Assam, or a design, Assamese design kind of stands out outside, I don't think that there should be any problem. And I'm very happy to say that in the last 5-6 years, in say any very high-end fancy store in Delhi, I do find 3-4 saris from Assam being kept, very exclusive, and they are charging you 50,000-75,000, which possibly the weaver gets whatever, the very paltry amounts. So it is going. We need to do more. We need to wear more. I think we are our best ambassadors, to talk about our weaves, to talk about how it is made outside, because you get more price if you are selling outside the state, saris especially. And as I said, if you can make products which are more versatile for the outside market, outside meaning outside of India, there is certainly a big potential. I must tell you this, which I did not talk about at all. I don't think that the government should get into any of this. It should be entrepreneurial. It should be like in the private space. I myself, I would like to do it in a cooperative space, because I'm already a lawyer. I don't want a business out of it. I'm trying to help a community. But I feel that, there is space for the private sector. One big outstanding in the private sector is that if a young person wants to get into it, how do you provide him the seed money, which is constructively used, and there is an ability of the person to pay back within a finite period of time.
Thank you, ma'am. We are proceeding towards the last phase of this webinar, the vote of thanks. Now I request our colleague, Dr. Mokibur Rahman, to give away the vote of thanks. Dr. Rahman.
Thank you, Jantana. Now it's my turn to offer a formal vote of thanks. I, on the behalf of Zoology Department, Pragjyotish College, thanks all of you for being a part of the webinar. As we all know that handloom sector is the second largest industrial sector in India. Basically, first sector is the agriculture sector. About 4.3 million people are engaged in this sector. So our Assam contribute 14% industrial production to the India. And we are lucky enough that some of the participants from the village have joined in the webinar. They are basically entrepreneur and weaver. গতিকে মই গাঁৱৰ ফালৰ পৰা যিমানখিনি পাৰ্টিচিপেণ্ট আহিছে জইন কৰিছে মই অভিনন্দন জনাইছো। আসলে আমাৰ উদ্দেশ্যটো অকল এই webinar-খনৰ উদ্দেশ্যটো এটি নাছিল যে অকল আমি ছাত্ৰ ছাত্ৰী বা শিক্ষকৰ মাজতে থাকিম, আমি শিপিনীসকলৰ মাজত সোমাই যাব পৰাতে এটা এখন ভাবিছিলো। গতিকে মই সকলোকে ধন্যবাদ জনাইছো যে সেইখিনি আমাৰ গাঁৱৰ ফালৰ পৰা আহিছে। গতিকে আমি আপোনালোকে গম পালে বাইদেউৰ যিটো লেকচাৰ দিলে গম পালে যে অসমৰ যিটো সেক্টৰ হ্যান্ডলুম সেক্টৰ আমি কিমান বিশ্ব দৰবাৰলৈ লৈ যাব পাৰো। আমি ডিজাইনবিলাক দেখা পালো, ডিজাইনবিলাকত আমাৰ দেখিলো যে অসমৰ ঐতিহ্য বা প্ৰাণী সম্পদ বা বনজ সম্পদবিলাক তাত লগো হিচাপে ইউজ কৰিছে, আৰু সেইটো আমাৰ কাৰণে গৌৰৱৰ বিষয় যে আমি বিশ্ব দৰবাৰত আমি নিজকে অসমীয়া বা অসমীয়াৰ হস্ততাঁত শিল্প আমি আগবঢ়াই নিবলৈ ইচ্ছা কৰি আছো। গতিকে দেখা যায় যে আমাৰ যিসকল গাঁৱলীয়া শিপিনী আছে, শিপিনীসকল প্ৰায় যদি দেখা যায় যে 72% শিপিনী কিন্তু মহিলা। আৰু এতিয়া আমাৰ লকডাউনৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত বা যিটো অতিমাৰী হৈছে, অতিমাৰীৰ ফলত আমাৰ যিটো গোটেই চেক্টৰটো অসমতে নহয় গোটেই ইণ্ডিয়াৰ হেণ্ডলুম চেক্টৰটো গোটেই ধ্বংস হৈ যোৱাৰ নিচিনা হৈছে। বেচিকেলি এইটো যিহেতু আমাৰ গাঁৱৰ চেক্টৰ, গাঁও এৰিয়াত হয়, বেচিকেলি যদি গাঁও এৰিয়াত হয়। গতিকে এই সম্পৰ্কে আমি পিছত কিছু পৰ্যালোচনা কৰিম বা এনেকৈ ৱেবিনাৰ এখন পাতিম বা আকৌ মেডামক আমি ইনভাইট কৰিম।
মই এটা কথা ক'ব খুজিছিলো, মইতো নাজানো, মই অসমীয়াত ক'লোহেঁতেন।
নিশ্চয় বাইদেউ, এনেকে একো নাই বাৰু। আমাৰ গোটেই এইখিনি এনেকে লৈছিলো, অকল আমি টিচাৰ ষ্টুডেণ্টে নহয়, গতিকে আমাৰ মেইন উদ্দেশ্যটো আছিল যে তেখেতসকলক যাতে আমি ক'ব পাৰো গাঁৱৰ পৰা যিখিনি আহিছে। গতিকে so I would like to offer my heartfelt gratitude to our dynamic principal sir and today's inaugurator, Dr. Manoj Kumar Mohanto sir, for giving us the permission to organize this wonderful webinar. Thank you, sir. Special thanks goes to our lovely Vice Principal Madam, Dr. Ranjita Madam, Vice Principal Pragjyotish College, for delivering welcome address. Thanks, Madam, once again. Our sincere thanks go to today's research person, Krishna Sharma Madam, for delivering such a wonderful, fruitful, informative lecture. Despite her busy schedule, she agreed to be the resource person of today's webinar. Once again, thank you, ma'am. Our special thanks goes to Mr. Sangsonil Borua, Munda, for technical support. Thank you, Munda, once again. At last, but not the least, special thanks goes to all the participants for participating and quite listening during the webinar. Thank you, all of you. Once again, I congratulate all of you to the webinar. And by saying this, okay, it's order from the organizing committee. So we want to close the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, all of you.
Very nice.
Once again, thank you, ma'am.
Deliberation. Very nice deliberation.
Nice.
Congratulations, Pragjyotish College and Krishna Sharma.
Thank you.
I'm Subhata Sharma, retired Vice Principal
Yes,
of Boston College. I was hearing all these things. It is very nice, and Krishna Sharma is taking much pain. She is patenting also, and the Mugas, she is very much interested in Assam's interest. It's her interest. So many congratulations, Krishna Sharma. You go on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Subrata ma'am, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, ma'am.
Your kind
I
presence.
was from the beginning. Thank you, madam. I was there.
Thank you.
Ma'am, it's an inspiration for us, ma'am.
Sure.
Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Okay.